Nate.
Sheldon.
Dan.
Priscilla.
Derek.
Swickle.
Stetsy.
Nathan.
Liz.
Justin.
Hey, we have two Nathans here. Oh. Okay. So this evening, I'm going to talk a little bit about something I've talked about a lot, and I'll come at it from a little different direction each time, and that's trusting ourselves. Trusting yourself. It's very hard to do that. We always want to look somewhere else to find out, are we doing this right? Should we be doing this? Maybe I should check with somebody else. And of course, as you probably found, there are all kinds of people that just love to tell you what to do. Just love to correct you, say, oh no, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't. All based on what? On their opinions, which are not really much more correct than your opinions. So going to the Buddhist teaching here, I want to talk, I can't quote it exactly, but coming from the first century scholar monk Nagarjuna said that emptiness is for us to see emptiness, which is one of the main teachings of Buddhism. Everything the Buddha actually discovered his basic understanding when he awoke 2,500 years ago, as it is said, is that everything is dependently arisen, that nothing comes from its own side. Mm-hmm. Everything is empty of a self or a me feeling. So whatever it is that you think of as me or I, if you look at that closely enough, you'll begin to see that it's empty of what you think about it. It's actually empty. In order to understand emptiness, one has to begin to see what? Contingency. Contingency, that everything is contingent upon everything else. It's like the weather. You might have a weatherman, weatherwoman, what do they call them? What do they call them? Meteorologist. Yeah, fancy word for somebody who's guessing. Because they're just guessing. They don't know. I mean, if a meteorologist says it's going to be in the 80s tomorrow and it suddenly rains, they don't lose their job. They're guessing. Now, as they say, it's an educated guess, so they have some instruments, they're able to look at the sky, but they don't really know for sure, because everything is contingent upon everything else. And this is just an incredibly vast array of little tiny dots, little tiny atoms, molecules, all getting together and forming, coming up in an individual, which when you were a little baby, your mother and father gave you a name, started to train you, introduced you to your brothers and sisters if you had them, told you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, corrected you, maybe spanked you, or at least corrected you. All based on what? Their opinions, their ideas, dependently arisen, contingent. To see contingency, the way things are, everything is dependent on everything else, and all based on, you could say chance, but not exactly. Because, and this is why Buddhism is called a middle way. The middle way, not too tight, not too loose. Very difficult for ego or self-centeredness, or the me feeling we have all the time about our stuff and our property and our ideas and our opinions and our emotions, our thoughts. These are all dependent on everything else for their apparent identity. Priscilla and I, as some of you know, Priscilla and I have been on a diet trying to get rid of some excess contingency. Or cellulite. And one of the things we ran into, looking into the kind of the science behind, Priscilla basically, looking at science behind the whole body and how it functions. There's something, as we all know, the autonomic nervous system, or the all the operations. Like quite often I'll say to you, if you really want control of your life, then just think of what that would be like. Suddenly you have total control. You're able to control your heartbeat, control your blood flow, control your body temperature, control the amount of sugar that's going around inside your brain so you can think, control your hair growth or lack thereof, control your fingernails, and control. You don't want that kind of control. Or do you? I don't want that kind of control. I'd rather leave that to what? What do they say, Mother Nature? Actually, the culprit is something called the diencephalon. It's in, what is it? It's in the center of the head or the rear part of the forebrain. So it's a little area there that decides everything. Okay, pump more here, warm this up, cool this off. Looks at, you could say, or is responsible for, or is the clearinghouse for all of these various bodily functions that have been going on since back when we were alligators, or I guess monkeys, or whatever this slowly has come out of the primal situation. And so coming back to the first few words out of my mouth when we began to talk, it's about trust. Very important to learn or understand or have a fundamental insight that we really need to trust ourselves. Excuse me, if you spend the rest of your life constantly checking with people to see what you should do next, what you think next, how you should feel, whether you should take this medication or that medication, or on and on, get this job, lose this girlfriend or boyfriend, or get married, get divorced, and not. You go back to school, it's endless, isn't it? I mean, we're always, in some way or another, we're always doing what? We're looking at what? Fork in the road. We're always looking at, should I or should I? And of course, you have heard me say, if you've been listening to me for very long, you hear me say that there really isn't a fork in the road. That everything, if you trust yourself, then you can handle any apparent fork as you move towards it. So it's like driving down a highway. The GPS will tell you when to turn. Your own GPS, you could say, your own sense of what you need to do next will be apparent to you only if, and here again, this is you could say this is an opinion. It's based on 40 years of doing this. So the opinion has a little bit of foundation to it. And that is, if you spend enough time sitting, shikantaza, sitting and practicing and looking at how the mind works, how the mind rises, creates an image, and then falls. Something else rises and then falls. The mind is doing that all the time. If you're cooking some pancakes, or you're making some coffee, or you're washing dishes, or you're talking to your friends on the phone, or you're going out to your car, you're taking the garbage out, you're getting your mail, reading the newspaper, mopping the floor. The mind is always doing what? Chatter, 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 chatter. I should, I shouldn't, they should, we should, I better do this, I better not do this. A constant stream of language all strung together that is there because we are afraid of ourselves. We're afraid we might go off the rails or make a mistake. We don't trust ourselves. So we fill it up with stuff thinking this is going to help. And don't misunderstand. I'm not saying we should stop that. I'm not saying we should stop that. I'm not saying we should justify that. And I'm not saying we should look somewhere else to distract ourselves or hide out from it. Quite often, and I'm not correcting doctors or psychologists, psychiatrists, but I'm just merely pointing out that a lot of the approaches that are taken there are about covering it up. It's like the medication you just mentioned a few minutes ago, Ritalin. It's about looking at a situation judging it. That's wrong. Kids shouldn't be running all over the place. So we'll drug them and quiet them down. Not a good approach. Not a good approach. I mean, knowing nothing about medicine, other than I can pronounce the word diencephalon, which because I looked it up. But the idea of constantly controlling, trying to drug things, all based on our opinions, our presumptions, our preconceptions about how things should be and how they shouldn't be. And what I'm saying here as a Buddhist priest, as a Buddhist teacher, I'm saying, trust yourself, slow down, spend a half an hour a day sitting, look at the wall or look out at the floor and just observe, hold the body very still and observe what the mind does. Every person in here's mind will do the same thing but in a different way. It will avoid, or maybe not. Maybe you have total clarity. Probably if you have total clarity, you won't be coming here. You'll be somewhere else having total clarity, enjoying yourself. Probably over at the Indian restaurant. So what's being said is, observe how, in order to see clearly how we avoid the very thing we need to see, it seems to be necessary to watch our mind push on things, pull things this way, change things, add on stories onto this. Because if you just observe it, you are not feeding it. If you just observe the way the mind gets carried away with itself, its ideas and opinions and so on. So obviously we need to control some things. I'm not saying that we need to just be a dummy, or someone who is just like this stone Buddha, just sits there and never does anything. I'm saying a little of each. Hold still and look. Go out, live your life, interact with people, trust yourself. Look at the way in which you handle decisions. Be very, I don't say careful, but be somewhat tentative and cautious about even labeling anything a decision. Because a lot of times if you say, I have to decide, what you're basically saying, maybe not always, but there's a good chance you are saying that I need to make a decision about something that I know nothing about. Because if that fork in the road is, if you have trusted yourself and you allow that fork in the road to get very close to you, then you can see it very clearly. You could say, well, obviously I'm going to go this way. It's choiceless. But if you can't trust yourself, then you will try to make up your mind ahead of time like a weather person does for a picnic on Sunday. Got to come up with something. We want to have a picnic, yes.
Speaking of Ritalin and then ADHD, what about meditation and meditators with regard to things in the mind that are ADHD is like this, but what about things that are beyond the ken of meditation to amend? Like what about autism? No amount of meditation is going to change that.
The parents could meditate.
The parents could meditate. But what about as to the person themselves? And,
What's the question? I know I see what you're saying, but what's the question?
What about things meditation can't fix?
Then you can't fix it. But, of course, I don't think of meditation as something that fixes something.
Mm-hmm.
There's fundamentally, from this point of view here, there's nothing broken.
Yeah.
Even autism is not broken.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with someone who's autistic. I'm not saying that there aren't chemical things that have happened that produce that situation, which can be difficult, not only for the parents but for the child.
I guess I don't think of medication always as a matter of covering up. I mean, there may be symptoms that you may have to.
Not
okay,
no,
all right.
No. There. I mean, No, I'm just saying quite often medications are used in a very aggressive and manipulative way. No,
Yeah.
I take medications. I take metformin. I take the diabetes medication. So yeah, no, I'm not saying that by any means.
Hmm.
No, but we could also look at what it's doing and
Yeah.
see if actually look at it and say, should I need to do that? Do I need open heart surgery? Or is there another way of approaching that? Do I, just take a look at it? But I think it's very good if you can get as close to the situation as you can so that you're involved rather than you just turn it over to a.
Yeah, I guess I feel like I'm asking
Okay.
/ commenting because I was diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, and I'm aware that I have it as an adult. And I've meditated for about 17 years now, and meditation aids, but it cannot overcome ADHD.
Okay, let's. Do you want to have an open interview right now?
Sure.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
What is ADHD?
ADHD is
I mean, what you think? I don't want to hear the dictionary. I want to hear what you think it is based on your experience.
my experience of it.
Yes.
It is the movement of attention undesirably from one object to another that, for my experience of it, appears unamendable. And that's a problem for me because I need to have my mind stay on one topic or I will never get my PhD done.
Got it.
So,
You want some help?
sure.
Come and talk to me. You've never really brought that up before.
It's very new news to me.
It's new news.
Yeah.
My first suggestion. It's a suggestion. But my first suggestion is stop calling it that. Don't call it, don't give it that clinical term and take that term ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
visualize yourself taking that term and peeling it right off whatever it is that it's labeling
Mm-hmm.
and lay that label on an imaginary shelf
Mm-hmm.
and then look at what it was that you're labeling.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the actual texture of that experience, that feeling of not being able to concentrate, that feeling of being able to have your attention go somewhere and all of a sudden it's somewhere else and then it's something, and go back into that and look at it and insofar as you are able, see the degree to which you are unhappy about not being able to control it. Follow me?
Mm-hmm.
What'd they say?
You said, take the label ADHD,
Yeah.
peel it off,
Yes.
my experience, set it aside, look at the texture of that experience and how I am unhappy with the mind that moves from here to here.
Okay, it's enough. So stop it.
Okay.
I want to make a comment. I'm not having a conversation with someone who is distracted at all.
What? No, I'm sorry.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm saying you're very, very clear. You heard exactly what I said. You repeated in your own words what I said. So I'm saying that your suffering or your discontent, your unhappiness is coming from another area. You need to look at it. When I say you don't need to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But from the point of view of this being an issue or problem,
Mm-hmm.
please take some time to look at the texture of it
Mm-hmm.
rather than what it is pointing. It's just very easy. It's just like when someone has a really bad feeling in the morning, the feeling is, oh, I'm depressed.
Mm-hmm.
People label things. It's like you put a lid on a jar, a lid on a box,
Mm-hmm.
covered up, tied up, put a label on it. Okay, we got that solved. I'm depressed. So now what do? Well, I go to somebody, I tell them I'm depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are that person is going to medicate you
Yeah.
if they're in business, which most of them are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's wrong, but there's billions, probably, well, millions anyway, of people that are living that way. But I'm saying in your
Mhm.
situation, don't do it. Just give it the benefit of the doubt. Don't label it until you absolutely have to, and just look at the quality of that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you connecting a little bit with what I'm saying?
Yeah. I guess I have, when I dealt with this as a child, the impression in the 80s is that it would go away by adulthood. Now, the research seems to indicate it's a condition that stays with you through your whole life. And it's caused me inconceivable amounts of suffering academically because I always perform beneath my aptitude. And it's causing me still a lot of problem.
Stop it. Don't. Please don't. There's too many I mean, even if those stories are true, even if they're true, even if they're completely, I mean, if we get forensics in on this, and we find out that, by golly, it's right, he actually does have this, see, don't dig a trench with it. Actually, your awareness itself has no identity. Yeah. Go ahead.
But the skandhas through which it has to act in time and space
Yeah.
do have contingents.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm going to do what you said. I'm
Okay.
going to go
Well,
look.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, check that out. And the other thing, of course, we've talked about before is at some point solitary, a long solitary retreat to actually strengthen that which observes, because that's and that experience probably will be full of thoughts about that kind of feeling of not being able to stay. But you, as your meditation teacher, you need to be aware of the degree to which you are not able to observe.
Mm.
You need to, rather than try to medicate that or change that or get rid of that, I'm saying drag that right in. Or take the labels off and take the lid off the box and let's look at what's squirming beneath.
Mm-hmm.
Not easy to do.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's a no-brainer at all. But it seems very necessary to see that on a really, and it's such a deep and intimate level that it can be more painful. A lot of times that when we look at it, I think we've all had that experience. When you start to look at something and you're kind of cornered and you start to look at how difficult some particular aspect of your own psychology is, we start to think, I don't know if I want to do this. And then we'll start to talk to ourselves and we'll say, in fact, I shouldn't. This is unhealthy to do this. We'll start to lecture ourselves like somebody who knows something up here, looking down on us. You're right. You need to stop looking at that. You need to feel good. Go have a banana split. Or something. What's being said is, if you're sincere, and this isn't for everyone, but if you're sincere about understanding that in a really fundamental way, then that's how it's done. We have actually hold still and allow the awareness to sink below the radar of ego. Radar of ego is full of stories and ideas and opinions. Opinions, and this is out of Nagarjuna also, opinions are useless. It's just the way, I think the way I was referring to it recently is it's just a life raft for ego. Oh, well, I got that opinion, so I'll jump on that, and that'll keep my self-image, my ideas afloat for a while. And there's a lot of people, I think, that have themselves tied up in some kind of a description or story about themselves that is accurate from the point of view of science and the point of view of people who study ADHD. I mean, they've got you. But that's all very empirical, forensic. That's all. What's the assumption there? That there is someone. I mean, there is a solid ongoing entity that needs to be repaired, fixed, or healed. People even heavily involved in Buddhism even talk about, well, we need to have a healing. Did you have a question?
No, I wanted to comment about this. This is something that I'm actually struggling with as well. So coming here, I've been taken off by AD. I've been back to school as well.
Okay.
I was honored when I was a child as well. I excelled in school at the time, and when I was taken back off of it, And I'm coming to terms with the fact that it feels like I'm pressured to maintain, sort of be part of the status quo, and that variation of sort of personalities is not really embraced so much. And I find myself sort of having an internal struggle of beating myself up, thinking that, well, I must be at a disadvantage to somebody else. Sometimes I wonder if it's the model that I'm living within, that maybe the fact that there's not enough acceptance, and that the model is so rigid.
You have a question?
It's mine.
Do
No,
you have a question for me?
I don't have a question.
You should have.
Should I?
You should have, yeah. With all of that, with
Yeah.
that much of a statement, either that or come up here and give a talk.
No?
Follow me?
Yeah.
Let me make one suggestion. What was your name again?
Derek?
Derek?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me make a suggestion. I'm not going to say stop contrasting things like you're doing, but I will say stop comparing. It's a useless approach. It's a useless approach to navigating samsara, or this world of cause and effect, up and down, subjective, objective, this illusion that we call a three-dimensional world that the Buddha saw completely through. But continue to compare, continue to contrast and see differences in shape, texture. But don't let yourself, if I can say it this way, go too far into evaluating whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's what I would say. Do you meditate a lot?
No. This is a new experience for me.
I think it would be it's not going to solve things, but what it does, it's an awareness practice. Meditation is about seeing more and more and more clearly what is actually happening with this construct that we have given a name to.
Here's my question. Do you think my
Yes.
opinion is... There's
Pardon
some
me?
validity to my opinion?
I don't think there's validity to anyone's opinion, because opinion is based on what? Conjecture. And conjecture is based on trumped up ideas. Either something is true or it is not true. Everything else is an opinion. And so I don't mean to correct you or insult you. I'm just saying that look really closely at what you consider your opinions. Here again, I'm not saying that we don't have, my opinion is the, we have relative opinions that are happening all the time. I think, one kind of food is maybe better for me than others, but I don't know really, but so some of that is opinion. So there's opinions going, but it's really good to not make an opinion so strong that it functions as a flotation device for your identity, so that you no longer actually begin to see who you are in a fundamental way. So be really tentative about, be able to tell the difference. This is called discriminating awareness wisdom on one level. Being able to see the difference between when you are you're entertaining an opinion to support your delusion, and when you have an opinion that is just a relative situation where I'm pretty sure there's a coffee pot out in the kitchen. I was out the last time I was out there was one. Now, it's possible someone's taken it. But, so it's an opinion that it's out there, but it's based on quite a bit of evidence, you could say. But it's not a fact. In fact, talking about facts, there's nothing outside this room from the point of view of the six sense fields and their objects. These five sense consciousnesses and the thinking process, there's nothing outside this room. If you see that, if you fundamentally see it all the way down to your gut, suffering is over. Because suffering is only about creating illusion and participating in illusion, including ADHD. Illusion.
So is that your opinion on opinions? Is that a possibility? Can you
Yeah, it is my opinion. It's my opinion. Good one. It's 40 years worth of looking at it. I come up with the opinion that you need to meditate. It's my opinion. So what did I just say? Paraphrase me.
I'm
blame you.
In what ways can ego get in the way of trusting oneself?
The main way that it gets in the way is it masquerades as the truth, which is another way of saying opinion. So it masquerades, it hides behind a mask of truth, honesty, and we all know this is true. So that's why sitting meditation is so powerful, because it is actually, you're unmasking who this fundamentally is. And every time you take off a mask, there's a new layer to the onion. Your eyes still water, still an onion. So it's kind of like it's like a masquerade. It's like, does that make some sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and each person, you can't come along and pick on. I got picked on. There. I mean, we can come. We can't really pick on everybody in the same way. Everybody provides their own platform for being picked on, and some people are braver than others. But that could happen to that same kind of situation. Where we're actually pointing at someone's deception. I mean, it's a valuable thing to happen, but whether you're ready to participate on that level or not it's hard to say. Not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone wants some kind of fundamental help. I have a few dozen people that consider me their meditation teacher, but there's probably only maybe less than a half a dozen who are really, really serious about this. Other people, it's just in name. Yeah, Bob's my meditation teacher. Yeah, sure, I'll be your meditation. But when we have an interview, it's more about they're telling me what they've been thinking, what they're doing, what's going on with them. Maybe they'll tell me their problems, but there's no actual intent to go way down into this situation we call me and my stuff, my feeling, my life. And of course, it's a mutual situation. I'm not here to really sell anything. It may look that way, it doesn't feel like it. And to go back to what Derek was pointing out, so kindly pointed out to me. Sure, there are opinions, but the kind of opinions that operate there it's very, very clear. You can have opinions. You can have an opinion when you approach the fork in the road and say, well, it's my opinion, I'm going this way. So you can have opinions, but it's quite often what happens with opinions. They'll all recognize this, if not in ourselves and half the people we know. A lot of times opinions masquerade, here again the same word, as fact. People don't even say it's my opinion. They say, well, this is true and that's true and this is true. And then if you corner them, then you say, well, yeah, I guess it is my opinion. So the idea isn't so much to get rid of anything, to get rid of opinions, to get rid of neurosis, to get rid of fear, to get rid of self-centeredness, to get rid of ego. But to see that all of that is illusory. There is no solid situation anywhere.
Is this contingency?
It is. It is.
So, how do we begin to sort of see through that masquerade, or more importantly, know that it's there?
I think we practice, there might be other ways, but we practice looking at the very thing that is generating those illusions, which is the mind. And that's broken, according to the Yogacara tradition, that's broken down into 8 sections. The 5 sense fields, the intellect, are very loosely described as the process, a mental process that takes charge of all the senses and tells you what you're smelling, what you're tasting, what you're feeling, and where the doorway is when you want to leave the building. And then there's the seventh, which is manos, or the klesha mind, which is the particular area of consciousness, as it's broken down here, that identifies, that believes or posits an identity, a solid separate person from the world. In other words, creates subject and object. And then there's the eighth consciousness, or alaya vijnana, which is the store consciousness, which is the area that stores all of these tendencies, or the Sanskrit word is vasanas, or beliefs. And according to this tradition, when this body mind drops away, that's where all of that goes. Then it all comes back down and comes back into another birth as another person, not necessarily the same person. But it's just tendencies come into being, energies come into being. So to see that, hold still. Call it meditation, call it holding still. Hold still a lot and just observe your mind and make friends with yourself on a really deep level, where this warfare that goes on so deep in all of us begins to slow down and we stop fueling it. It's very, very powerful. Once you stop fueling the war there, once the war has either stopped or is not bothersome anymore, it may still be there, then you can fundamentally help others, because you don't have an agenda about them other than to be with them. Mm-hmm. The vow that we take when I put on this robe, this is a robe of the Buddha, is to not necessarily save all beings, that's one way of saying it, but just to be with all things. Never separate yourself from anyone, anywhere, anytime. That doesn't mean correct them. It just means to be with people. They'll let you know if they need your help. I always get permission. When you walk in this room and sit down, you get this kind of a situation. But if we were to meet out in the street, we'd be talking about your favorite color and trying to figure out where to have coffee. As I'm sure you guys know. Dan, you have any questions?
How powerful is awareness? I mean, you say you're on medications. Does that affect your awareness, or are you still clear? Because, it's like I watched my dad, who's Parkinson's, and on a cocktail soup of drugs and stuff like that.
I would say there's probably, I have no idea if the medications I take are less right now than they used to be, but I have no idea. There's probably something affecting. Maybe if I stop taking metformin, I'll forget I'm a priest. I'll end up going to work over at Post Cereals or something. So, I don't know. There's something. Everything is contingent, so everything is affecting. Just if everybody is here and I give a talk and you don't come, the talk changes. Everything is contingent on everything else. Everything is completely, and that's why I'm very much about discussing this together with people rather than just sitting up here and giving a talk and leaving. It's good to interact with people about things. So questions are good. What do you think?
I'd like to think it was powerful enough to be able to, get through something like that you got through. Right?
Yeah.
Get that through.
Some things are probably more affect people or change their awareness a lot more than other things. I know when I was last July, when I was Priscilla and I were out in Boulder, and I almost left the body. Actually, I was really, really sick, and really infected, and I was in bed for about 10 days. And I remember, and I was in pain with what was it I had? Gallbladder stuff, yeah. And it was very, very painful. And they wanted to drug me with, what was that stuff? Dilaudid?
Dilaudid.
Yeah.
So you were diluted.
I was diluted on Dilaudid. And, but I didn't, even though I liked the pain being backed off, I actually kind of preferred the pain to what it was doing to my mind, because I didn't like the feeling of having my mind turn to jello. That's what it felt like. It felt like, I could almost see how maybe some people would like, if they were suffering enough. I mean, this is jello mind is much better than mind made of nuts and bolts or solid brass or something.
I think that's synthetic morphine.
Is it synthetic
I
morphine?
think so.
Whoa.
It's really, I did not like it. In fact, they gave me a little plunger so I could feed myself. I remember thinking at the time, this is kind of, as out of it as I was thinking, this doesn't make any sense that somebody can actually drug themselves. But I think their idea was that you'd know how much pain you had and you could just push a button. Well, as I recall, I think I did it a little bit, then I stopped, and then they come in and they were a little upset. Were they a little upset because
they were arguing with you that you didn't stop it. The doctor said, no, you didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
Pointed to the machine, and it had been like 18 hours. And you hadn't had it.
Yeah, I wasn't taking.
It's
Yeah,
weird.
I'm not sure where they were coming from. Whether they just wanted to be right, or I don't know. But anyway, I didn't care for it. But it was definitely affecting my thinking process, if you want to call it awareness. So probably everything is. Who knows? High fructose corn syrup is probably doing something to us. If they were to actually do all that, they might find out that, they take people off high fructose corn syrup and they run less red lights. A fact. Not an opinion, a fact. Those are the kind of things they come up with and we hear on the news and we think, oh, boy, where'd they get the funding for that?
Yeah.
And they got it from the lobby against high fructose corn syrup. Or whatever it may be. Any other comments or questions on trusting yourself, especially? That would be something you can ask on that, because I can talk. I want to talk a little bit more about it, but if you have a question, I'd rather respond to a question.
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good? I know you're good. No doubt. Stephanie?
Sounds great, trusting yourself.
Yes.
I guess it's just getting real clear on that, because it seems like most of the time it's based off of hopes and fears, or should not.
Yeah.
And so when does that kind of, or how do you clear that away to see exactly
Okay.
what
Good.
is
Good.
choiceless?
Okay. You don't clear it away.
Okay.
So you don't have to fix anything. You don't have to clear anything away. The only thing you have to do, and if I'm going to use the word have to, is you have to see the way in which you don't trust yourself. You don't have to change it, but you have to see very clearly the way in which you are pushing on things, or pulling on things, or changing things, or justifying things, or telling little stories about something. Well, it's this because of this, because of this. That just is like Dilaudid. It just gums up the works. It's like putting Jell-O into a watch. It does not tick. Well, it might tick, but it sounds funny. But the idea here is, and this is a way I've described trust before that may be helpful. The feeling of allowing yourself to not know what's going to happen next, and not panic where you start to fill it up with ideas and worries and thoughts, where you can actually be with your awareness that does not know what's going to occur next. This is the beginning of trust. It's anytime I walk in this room and come up here and sit down, I have no idea. Well, I might have some idea. I'm going to talk about trust, but that's not very much. But I don't know what I'm going to say, and one of the reasons I do it that way is I want to, if I have a bunch of notes up here, you might as well read a book. But if I come in here and I put myself on the spot, which I'm more than happy to do, then if I do have anything to say, which may help you and may not help you, at least it'll be genuine. It'll be something coming out of how this looks to me, and it'll have a quality of at least not adding to your self-deception, hopefully.
Just thinking about your question, Stephanie, I guess part of what I fear in trusting myself is that if I let back from all those things, my parents told me, like, I'd eat the whole cookie jar of cookies, or I wouldn't restrain my speech, I would just, but I don't know that I would actually do that. That's what my fear is telling me would happen.
It's a good one.
I don't actually, so I just was really following what you're saying. I don't actually know that that's the case, but I've been told that that would, you better think about what you say. Don't use those 4-letter words when
Yeah. You're in Mexico.
but I don't know that I would do that, but I fear that that's the case.
And I think it's different for everyone. I mean, if you
Yeah.
take 10 people and they all say, well, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, you've got to still have 10 different, 3-ring circuses going on there, and they're all functioning in different ways, have different contingency, different dependent labors, and different, like every little thing that's happening, just like I was saying. If you take one person out of this room, one person that didn't come or something like that, it changes the whole dynamic. Anything, Sheldon? Dan?
The trusting yourself, I've heard you say that when you do something, you act on something, not to question it or don't look back at it. Be confident in what you're doing. As far as trusting, I think, I'm not sure if I'm paraphrasing it the right way.
I'm listening.
But are there ever times where you act on something and then you also see that, well, maybe something needs to be done else to,
Yeah.
explain something to somebody about it or something like that?
Yeah, then you could do that. You've heard me say, and I could give a whole talk on this, or we could discuss this for the next hour. I say, don't do anything unless you have to. Anything unless you. If you're doing something you don't really have to do, you're taking pot shots at things. It's guesswork. It's gambling. It's just doing something, hoping things will get better. I think because I can't stand to hold still and do nothing, and that's basically what we're doing as meditators. We're just training ourselves to hold still and give things the benefit of the doubt. Wait for a while, see how things will develop. It's the common word for this is patience. Take some time. We're all anxious for the dinner bell to ring. We're all anxious for things. But we could, in your particular milieu, or whatever your job or your family situation, it's very good to just play with that a little bit and see what it's like when you just don't jump the gun on things. You wait for a while. You're listening to someone is telling you something, your wife, your spouse, your mom, dad, brother, sister, son, close friend, enemy, a coworker, whatever, someone you talk to a lot. It's a very good place to do that, is just observe. Listen to what they're saying. Look at their body language and don't compare. Contrast is fine, because contrast just sees black, white. One's not better than the other. Black is good, white is good. Comparing immediately feeds into some kind of conditioning, some kind of hope and fear about control, about not getting too close to burn yourself, or you get too far away, you don't get enough heat. So it's always manipulative. Whereas if you just are there, you just see the texture of things. Your friend, whom maybe you're used to maybe arguing politics with them, or maybe some kind of thing that you're always doing, and here at this particular time you just decide to experience them. Listen to them. Listen to the tone of their voice. Listen to when their voice goes up or goes down. Very important. Listen. Watch when they change their body position. Body language is a lot of communication going on there all the time. All the time. It's just so incredible. And it's not about information. The best, the most important, the most profound communication is not very practical. It's just being present. It's like appreciating flowers. Completely illogical why we love to look at things like that. But to respond to what you were saying, sure, you might, especially if you're very present, you feel like you're listening, not a lot of extra things are being added. Your mind is not too speedy, and you're pretty aware of what's not negative, positive, neutral, whatever's happening there. That's kind of the ideal situation, to suddenly find yourself moving in directions that you had not planned, because they're spontaneous. They're basically, you are actually embodying the contingency. It's called, there's two words for that.
Screwing it up.
Huh?
Screwing it up.
No, there's two words. One of them is if it comes and never leaves you, it's called freedom. If it comes and goes, it's called ego loss. I mean, self-centeredness is leaving. Self-centeredness is leaving. And then it'll come back. And then it leaves for a while, and you feel this kind of open feeling. But the minute you try to hang on to it as an identity, what does it do? It closes in again.
Is that happening because you're relying on something for your identity, so that it sort of recreates the ego?
Yeah, that'd be a good way of saying it. Yeah, there isn't anything to rely on.
Right. So
That's-
as soon as you start to cling to it and start to rely on it, you're back
Yeah.
into the ego.
Ouch. Anything else? Questions, comments? Okay, we can dedicate the mirror.